Hi there, and I welcome you back to our tutorial series on YouTube brought to you by the O3 Schools JAMB app. In our today's class, we'll look at the Transfiguration. As it is recorded in Matthew chapter 17, Mark chapter 9, Luke chapter 9. Now, the Transfiguration is simply change in Jesus's appearance. Matthew and Mark have similar accounts of Jesus' transfiguration, while Luke has a slightly different account. So let's look at Matthew and Mark's account of the Transfiguration. According to Matthew and Mark, in Matthew chapter 17 and Mark chapter 9, 6 days after the Great Confession, that's after Peter confessed that Jesus was the Christ, as opposed to others thinking he was John the Baptist or Elijah or Jeremiah or one of the prophets. 6 days after the Great Confession, Jesus took Peter, James, and John to a high mountain, and there he was transfigured. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as bright as light. And Moses and Elijah appeared and talked with him. Now the disciples saw this, that's Peter, James, and John. They saw it, and Peter offered to make 3 tabernacles there, one for Jesus, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice came out saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." The disciples heard the voice, and they fell down in their faces out of fear. Jesus touched them, asked them to stand up and that they should not be afraid. When they rose up, they found that Jesus was alone. And then Jesus charged them not to tell anyone about what had happened there until after his resurrection. The disciples kept wondering to themselves what Jesus meant by rising up from the dead. And then they asked him why the scribes felt that Elijah had to come first. And Jesus answered and told them that Elijah had come and they had done with him whatever they wanted. Now let's look at Luke's account. In Luke's account, it was 8 days after the Great Confession, as opposed to the 6 days recorded in Matthew and Mark. 8 days after the Great Confession, Jesus took Peter, James, and John to the top of a high mountain to pray. While he was praying, he was transfigured. His face was altered, and his robe became white and glistening. Moses and Elijah appeared and talked to him about what he was about to do in Jerusalem. Now, the disciples, that's Peter, James, and John, they were fast asleep, and they only saw this when they woke up. And Peter offered to make a tabernacle, 3 for Jesus, Moses, and Elijah. And while he was saying that, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and they were afraid. They entered the cloud, and they heard a voice saying, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." When the voice stopped talking, they found Jesus alone. Now they were afraid, and they decided to keep what they had experienced to themselves. You see the difference between Matthew and Mark's account as well as that of Luke's account. Here, it happened 6 days after the Great Confession, and here it took place 8 days later. Here, Jesus charged the disciples not to tell anyone what had happened. And in Luke's account, the disciples decided on their own not to reveal what they had witnessed on the high mountain. Then we'll look at the significance of the Transfiguration. You say Moses signifies the law. Elijah represents the prophets and their disappearance signifies the passing away of the law and the prophets. To be replaced by Jesus and a sacrifice. Lastly, we say the clouds, the bright cloud and the voice represents God's glory and power. So that's it for the transfiguration, changing of Jesus's appearance. So it's recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And Matthew and Mark have similar accounts, while Luke has a slightly different account of Jesus' transfiguration, and then the significance of the transfiguration. Now, let's take some questions from this topic that I've pulled out from the O3 Schools JAMB app. Here's the question we have. According to Matthew, the disciples of Jesus fell on their faces during the transfiguration when A. Jesus' garment became white, B. They heard a voice from the cloud, C. Jesus' face shone like the sun, and D. They saw Moses and Elijah. B. When they heard a voice from the cloud, they became afraid and they fell on their faces in fear. So the correct answer there is option B. In the story of the transfiguration of Jesus, Moses and Elijah represented the A. Glory of God, B. Old Testament saints, C. Law and the prophets, D. End of the age. C. They represented the law and the prophets, respectively. Moses for the law and Elijah for the prophets. Peter, James, and John were asked to keep their experience of the transfiguration secret until A. The kingdom of God comes, B. They met the other disciples, C. They descended from the mount, and D. The Son of Man is raised from the dead, until Jesus' resurrection. So D. The Son of Man is raised from the dead. We also have which disciples were with Jesus during the transfiguration. A. Peter, James, and John. B. Andrew, Thomas, and John. C. Peter, James, and Andrew. D. John, James, and Philip. Answer is A. Peter, James, and John. Those were the disciples that were with Jesus during the transfiguration. Then, who appeared to talk to Jesus during the transfiguration? A. Moses and Elijah. B. Elisha and Elijah. C. Moses and Samuel. D. Samuel and Elisha. We have A. Moses and Elijah, representing the law and the prophets. Once again, if you are yet to download the O3 Schools JAMB app, please do that. And also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you are yet to. Thank you.